The mission started like any other, but deep down, everyone in the SEAL team knew this one was different. They had trained for countless scenarios, hostile territory, ambushes, extreme weather, but something about this mission felt heavier, more serious. Their objective was clear: infiltrate enemy territory, gather critical intelligence on a fortified enemy base, and return safely. On paper, it seemed straightforward, but as they prepared, there was an unspoken understanding among them. Nothing ever goes exactly as planned in real combat. The night was quiet, almost eerily so. The moon cast a pale glow over the rugged landscape, and the only sounds were the rustling of their gear and the soft whispers of the team as they double-checked their equipment. Every SEAL carried years of experience, but each knew that experience alone could not guarantee safety. Their packs were heavy with ammunition, survival gear, and communication devices, all meticulously organized. They had gone over the mission plan multiple times, memorizing routes, landmarks, and fallback positions. Every detail mattered. Even the smallest mistake could be deadly. As they moved through the darkness, their senses were on high alert. Eyes scanned the terrain for any sign of movement, ears straining to catch a distant footstep or the whisper of wind carrying unnatural sounds. Each shadow could be a hiding enemy. Every noise could mean danger. Despite this, the team moved with quiet precision, almost as if the land itself knew to let them pass. The adrenaline coursing through their veins was sharp but controlled. They knew panic would be more dangerous than the enemies they might face. The team leader, a veteran with countless missions behind him, led the way. He moved silently, his instincts honed to detect any sign of threat. Behind him, the squad followed like a well-oiled machine, each member trusting the other completely. In situations like this, trust wasn't just a word, it was the difference between life and death. They had trained together, sweated together, and faced danger together. Now, those bonds would be tested in ways they could not yet imagine. As they approached the area near the enemy base, the landscape changed. Rocks became jagged and the path narrower, forcing the SEALs to move single file. The air was thick with tension. Every footstep had to be precise. Any misstep could alert the enemy. They had to rely on more than training. They needed patience, timing, and the ability to think several steps ahead. They also knew that the enemy was not just waiting passively. Somewhere out there, soldiers were alert, watching, listening, prepared to defend their territory with lethal force. Despite the danger, there was a strange beauty in the night. The stars stretched across the sky, untouched by the chaos below, and the wind carried a cold, clean smell. For a brief moment, the team allowed themselves a silent appreciation of the calm before the storm. Yet, every glance was cautious, every movement deliberate. They were ghosts in the shadows, unseen and unheard, moving with a purpose that went beyond survival. It was a mission, a duty, and a test of their skill and courage. Little did they know, this mission would push them to the limits of their abilities. They would face situations that no amount of training could fully prepare them for. Obstacles would appear out of nowhere, decisions would have to be made in split seconds, and the line between life and death would become razor thin. But at this point, all they could do was keep moving forward, step by step, trusting in their preparation and in each other. As they neared the outskirts of the enemy territory, a subtle tension began to settle in. The team slowed their pace, communicating with hand signals instead of words, their eyes scanning for the first sign of danger. The mission had officially begun. What was supposed to be a routine intelligence operation was quietly transforming into something far more dangerous. And though no one said it out loud, each SEAL felt it. The sense that this night could change everything, that the events ahead might test their courage, their skill, and even their will to survive. In those first hours, moving silently under the cover of darkness, the SEALs were unaware of how quickly things would spiral. They were focused, disciplined, and ready, but the challenges ahead would push them into a battle unlike anything they had faced before. The calm, quiet night held its breath, as if knowing that the storm was about to break. And the men moving through it had no idea that their courage and teamwork would soon be the only things standing between them and disaster. The SEALs had been moving carefully through the rugged terrain for hours, their eyes constantly scanning for signs of the enemy. Everything was quiet at first, almost too quiet, as if the land itself was holding its breath. Each man stayed alert, knowing that in hostile territory, silence could quickly turn into deadly chaos. The team had trained for ambushes, traps, and surprise attacks, but nothing could completely prepare them for the moment when danger strikes without warning. Suddenly, without any clear sign, the calm of the night shattered. Bullets whizzed past, kicking up dirt and rocks around the team. The SEALs dropped to the ground instantly, their training taking over as they sought cover behind jagged rocks and uneven terrain. Shouts and gunfire echoed across the mountainside, and the team quickly realized the worst. They had been ambushed. The enemy had been waiting, hidden in the shadows, and now the SEALs were surrounded. The first seconds were chaotic. Even for seasoned soldiers, the feeling of being trapped, outnumbered, and under fire sent a surge of adrenaline through the body. But the SEALs had faced impossible situations before. They didn't panic. They moved with purpose. Each member instinctively checked the other, ensuring everyone was safe and accounted for. Every second counted. Every movement could mean the difference between life and death. The team leader quickly assessed the situation. From his vantage point, he could see the enemy closing in from multiple directions. They were heavily armed and had clear knowledge of the terrain. The SEALs were outnumbered and in a vulnerable position. Retreat was not immediately possible, and reinforcements were too far away to reach them in time. The team had to think fast. Survival depended on coordination, skill, and the ability to remain calm under extreme pressure. Despite the danger, the team didn't lose focus. They began repositioning themselves to gain the best possible cover, moving silently and efficiently under heavy fire. Every rock, every dip in the ground became a potential shield. The SEALs used everything at their disposal, training, experience, and instinct, to minimize their exposure. Each man knew his role perfectly. Suppressing fire, protecting teammates, scanning for enemy movement. They were a single organism working in unison to survive the onslaught. As the firefight continued, the reality of their situation became clear. The enemy had them trapped. Escape routes were limited, and advancing forward without a plan would be suicidal. Every shot they fired had to count. Every decision was critical. Communication was vital yet risky. Speaking too loudly could reveal their position. They relied on hand signals and eye contact, moving like shadows among the rocks and darkness. Amid the chaos, a strange mix of fear and determination took hold. Fear because they knew the enemy outnumbered them. Determination because they refused to be defeated. Each SEAL pushed down natural instincts to flee and instead focused on the task at hand. Training kicked in, muscle memory guiding them in ways that years of preparation had drilled into their bodies. This was more than just a firefight. It was a test of discipline, courage, and mental strength. The SEALs quickly realized that survival depended on adapting to the enemy's strategy. They needed to anticipate moves, predict attacks, and exploit any weakness. Even under heavy fire, the team observed patterns, how the enemy moved, where the shots were coming from, and where the safest areas were to regroup. Every tiny detail mattered. A single misstep could cost lives. Time seemed to stretch endlessly. Bullets tore through the air, and the night echoed with shouts, explosions, and the sound of feet scrambling for cover. Yet through it all, the SEALs stayed composed. The bond between them, forged through countless missions, gave them strength. They could sense when a teammate needed support, when someone was in danger, and they acted instantly without hesitation. It was trust in action, the kind of trust that can turn desperate situations into chances for survival. In those first intense minutes, the team realized the full scale of the danger. They were not just in a fight, they were outnumbered and outgunned, trapped in a situation that could quickly become fatal. But even then, a quiet determination grew among them. The SEALs refused to accept defeat. They would hold their ground, fight strategically, and survive against all odds. Every move mattered, every shot had a purpose, and every second could tip the balance between life and death. The ambush was just the beginning. The SEALs had survived the initial chaos, but the battle was far from over. They had to remain vigilant, adapt quickly, and rely on their training and teamwork like never before. This moment would define them, testing their courage, skill, and resilience in ways no training exercise ever could. And little did they know, their survival depended on one crucial ally, someone watching from a distance, ready to turn the tide when it mattered most. After the initial shock of the ambush, the SEALs managed to find temporary cover behind jagged rocks and uneven terrain. Their breathing was heavy but controlled, each man aware that panic could be fatal. The enemy was all around them, their movements precise and threatening. The team had been trained for extreme situations, but being completely surrounded and outnumbered brought a new level of tension. Every second mattered, every decision could mean life or death, and they knew that surviving the situation would require more than courage. It would demand absolute focus and perfect teamwork. The team leader immediately gathered the squad for a quick assessment. His voice was calm, but it carried authority, cutting through the tension like a knife. "We need to know exactly what we're dealing with," he said, scanning the surrounding terrain with sharp eyes. Each SEAL took stock of their ammunition, positions, and available cover. The initial ambush had scattered them slightly, but they quickly formed a defensive perimeter, positioning themselves strategically behind rocks and natural barriers. They realized the situation was worse than they first thought. The enemy had superior numbers and was highly organized. Their weapons were deadly, and their positioning gave them a tactical advantage. The SEALs were outgunned, which meant every shot they fired had to count. There was no room for waste. The team also understood that retreat was not an option. The terrain made escape nearly impossible, and any attempt to run could turn into a deadly crossfire. Reinforcements were hours away, leaving them entirely on their own. This was a moment where survival depended on quick thinking, adaptability, and trust in each other's skills. Despite the danger, the SEALs' training began to take over. Each man moved with precision, keeping low and using every piece of cover effectively. They were constantly assessing the enemy, noting patterns in their movements, listening for the faintest sound that could indicate an approach. Every detail mattered: the rustle of a leaf, the flash of a weapon, the way the enemy positioned themselves. It was as if the entire world had narrowed down to this single moment of strategy and survival. The team also focused on protecting one another. Each SEAL watched the others, ready to provide cover if someone had to move or reposition. Trust was critical. In situations like this, hesitation or lack of coordination could be fatal. They communicated silently through hand signals, eye contact, and subtle movements, ensuring that no sound would give away their positions. The silence between the bursts of gunfire became just as important as the shots themselves. As they assessed their surroundings, the team realized they had to find a way to shift the balance. They couldn't simply wait for the enemy to make a mistake. They had to create opportunities themselves. They began plotting small, calculated movements to safer positions, all while keeping a low profile and minimizing exposure. Every movement was deliberate, every step measured, and every decision weighed against the potential cost. They had to think like chess players in the middle of a storm of bullets, predicting enemy actions and planning their own moves several steps ahead. Amid the chaos, there was a silent understanding among the SEALs. They were not just fighting the enemy, they were fighting fear itself. Being outnumbered and trapped would shake even the most seasoned soldiers, but they pushed through the natural urge to panic. The adrenaline in their bodies was high, but it was channeled into focus and precision rather than chaos. They relied on their instincts, honed through years of rigorous training and countless missions. Experience told them that even in the most hopeless situations, careful planning, discipline, and teamwork could make the impossible possible. As minutes passed, they began to spot weak points in the enemy's formation. A distant rise in the terrain offered slightly better cover, and an opening in the enemy's advance presented a chance to reposition. These small opportunities were critical. They could provide a way to reduce risk and regain some control over the situation. But moving to these positions required courage and perfect timing. A single misstep could expose them to enemy fire. The team also considered their limited resources. Ammunition was finite, and while each SEAL carried enough to defend themselves, they knew they couldn't afford prolonged firefights. Every shot had to serve a purpose, whether to suppress the enemy, protect a teammate, or create an opportunity to move. Every decision was carefully calculated, and the weight of responsibility was immense. Each man was aware that the lives of the others depended not just on skill, but on judgment, timing, and nerve. In the midst of all this, the team leader made one thing clear: they were going to survive. His calm, confident presence became a source of strength for the others. They were outnumbered, yes, but they were not helpless. They had training, skill, and each other. They were determined to turn this desperate situation into an opportunity for survival. And as they held their positions, scanning, calculating, and preparing for the next move, there was a growing sense of hope. A sense that, despite the odds, they could not only survive, but maybe even gain the upper hand. The next challenge was clear. They needed a strategy, a way to shift the battle in their favor without exposing themselves to deadly risk. It was a critical moment, one that would test their ability to think, act, and survive under extreme pressure. The SEALs were trapped, but they were far from defeated. With focus, courage, and teamwork, they were ready to face whatever came next, relying on skill and determination to turn the tide in their favor. While the SEALs huddled behind rocks and tried to survive the relentless enemy fire, miles away, a lone figure watched from a hidden vantage point. The sniper had been assigned to the mission as a specialist, a silent guardian meant to provide cover when situations turned critical. From this distance, the sniper could see everything: the enemy's formation, their movements, and the trapped SEALs struggling to hold their ground. Calm, composed, and focused, the sniper understood the seriousness of the situation. Lives were at stake, and precision would be everything. The sniper's rifle, custom-fitted and deadly accurate, lay steady against the shoulder. Through the scope, the chaos of the battlefield came into sharp focus. Every detail mattered: the way the enemy moved, the gaps in their coverage, even the slight glint of moonlight reflecting off weapons. From this distance, the sniper could see what the SEALs on the ground could only sense: a way to change the battle without exposing themselves to unnecessary risk. They didn't rush. Patience was part of their training. One wrong move or a hasty shot could cost lives, both theirs and the SEALs. With every passing second, the sniper mapped out the battlefield in their mind. They identified which enemy soldiers were most dangerous, which positions provided the most threat, and where the SEALs could safely move if help arrived. Even in the tense silence of the night, the sniper's heart beat steadily. Calm under pressure was their greatest weapon. They knew that their intervention might be the only thing standing between survival and disaster for the SEAL team below. As the enemy tightened the noose around the SEALs, the sniper finally made the first move. A single, precise shot rang out in the distance. The impact was immediate. An enemy soldier dropped silently, unseen by the rest of the unit at first. The team below, hearing the distant gunfire, felt a spark of hope. They couldn't see who was shooting, but instinctively they knew help had arrived. The sniper's presence, though hidden, was already changing the dynamic of the fight. From that point on, every shot the sniper fired was calculated with care. Each target was chosen not just to eliminate a threat, but to create confusion among the enemy. The sudden, unexpected losses in their ranks caused hesitation, forcing the enemy to rethink their advance. The SEALs, even in their exhausted state, noticed the shift. The pressure that had been suffocating them began to ease, if only slightly. It was a sign, a reminder that they were not completely alone, and that a single skilled ally could turn the tide. The sniper didn't act recklessly. They stayed hidden, moving only when necessary to maintain a perfect line of sight. Even when enemy soldiers began scanning for the source of the shots, the sniper remained ghost-like, adjusting positions subtly, always staying one step ahead. Their calm determination provided a silent but powerful advantage. While the SEALs below fought for survival in close quarters, the sniper's distant precision strikes were a lifeline, shaping the battle from afar. The SEALs themselves began to notice the change. The enemy's movements became less aggressive, their attacks slower and more cautious. The sniper had introduced uncertainty into the enemy ranks. Every time the SEALs saw an opening, even a small one, they gained a little more confidence. Fear and tension were still there, but hope began to creep back into their minds. The sniper's calculated intervention was giving them the time they desperately needed to regroup, reposition, and plan their next moves. Even in the chaos, the sniper observed the SEALs carefully. They noted when a soldier moved into danger, ready to provide immediate support. The sniper's actions were not just about killing the enemy, they were about control, strategy, and protecting their team. Each shot had purpose, precision, and timing. The sniper became an invisible force guiding the SEALs, shaping the battlefield in subtle but critical ways. Hours seemed to stretch as the battle continued. Yet, in every quiet pause, the sniper remained alert, patient, and focused. The night air was cold and heavy with tension, but the sniper's determination never wavered. They knew that a single mistake could undo everything. Lives depended on skill, patience, and careful planning. Slowly, the enemy's advantage began to crumble. What had started as an overwhelming attack now faced unpredictable resistance, all because one expert marksman had decided to intervene. From the SEAL's perspective, the sniper was like a guardian angel they couldn't see. Every distant shot that took down an enemy, every sudden pause in the enemy's advance, became a sign that survival was still possible. The SEALs used these moments to move slightly, reposition, and gain better cover. Each small success, each fraction of regained control was thanks to the unseen sniper. Confidence returned slowly, but steadily. The team realized that although they were still trapped and outnumbered, they now had a fighting chance. By the time the first light of dawn approached, the sniper had already transformed the battlefield. From a desperate situation where the SEALs had no room to maneuver, the team had gained breathing space, opportunity, and hope. The sniper's calm, precise actions had introduced a new variable that the enemy had not anticipated. They had changed the rules of the fight, shifting momentum in favor of the SEALs without ever exposing themselves to direct danger. It was in that moment, watching the SEALs survive, adapt, and prepare for their next moves, that the sniper knew their role had made the difference. Lives were no longer on the line by chance. The unseen hand of skill and precision had begun to tip the odds, showing that even a single individual, armed with patience, expertise, and courage, could alter the course of a seemingly hopeless battle. The first shot from the sniper had changed everything. The enemy, once confident and relentless, was suddenly uncertain. A soldier who had been advancing aggressively now hesitated, glancing nervously toward the distant origin of the shot. That hesitation spread like wildfire, shaking the morale of the attackers. For the SEALs trapped below, the difference was immediate and profound. What had felt like an impossible fight now seemed survivable. Hope sparked in their hearts, even amid the chaos of bullets and shouts. The sniper didn't stop. Every shot was carefully chosen, precise, and deliberate. Each target was a threat that needed to be eliminated, a choke point that needed weakening, or a key enemy position that could shift the battle in favor of the SEALs. Distance gave the sniper a unique perspective. While the SEALs on the ground had to worry about immediate danger from all sides, the sniper could see the battlefield as a whole, predicting enemy movements and neutralizing the most dangerous threats. Each successful shot not only reduced enemy numbers but also created confusion and hesitation in the remaining soldiers. The SEALs noticed the sudden shift. Enemy fire became less coordinated, less aggressive. Small opportunities began to appear, gaps in the enemy's formation, exposed positions, weak points in their approach. The team leader recognized these moments as a chance to act. Even under extreme pressure, the SEALs relied on their training. They moved carefully, using the sniper's shots as cover, shifting from rock to rock, taking advantage of the chaos the sniper had created. Every movement was calculated, every decision weighed against the risk of exposure. The sniper was more than a distant ally. They were the invisible hand controlling the flow of the fight. With each precise strike, the SEALs could plan their next move with more confidence. What had been an overwhelming ambush now had a rhythm, a strategy that the team could follow. The SEALs' adrenaline, which had been pure fear moments before, now became focused determination. They felt a renewed sense of strength, knowing they were not entirely alone, that someone was watching over them with deadly precision. Time stretched. Minutes felt like hours as the battle continued. Every shot from the sniper forced the enemy to react, sometimes firing wildly, sometimes hesitating, sometimes retreating to cover. This disruption was priceless. The SEALs could exploit these small windows of opportunity, slowly gaining better positions, consolidating their defenses, and even taking the fight to the enemy in small, controlled bursts. Each move, each careful step, was a dance of strategy and courage. Even under the constant threat of attack, the SEALs began to regain some control. They used their knowledge of the terrain to their advantage, combining it with the sniper's precision strikes to outmaneuver the enemy. Every careful movement mattered, every bullet fired had purpose, and every second the sniper delayed enemy action was a second closer to survival. It became clear that the tide of the battle was starting to turn. What had begun as desperation was slowly transforming into cautious optimism. The sniper continued to work tirelessly, observing the battlefield, identifying new threats, and striking with deadly accuracy. From the SEAL's perspective, the distant shots were almost supernatural. It was as if an invisible protector was picking off the enemy one by one. Each impact changed the way the enemy behaved. Soldiers became anxious, commanders hesitated to issue orders, and the once tightly coordinated attack began to fall apart. The SEALs seized these moments, moving strategically and reclaiming small areas of ground that had been lost in the initial ambush. The enemy, now confused and shaken, struggled to maintain the momentum of their assault. The sniper's calculated precision had disrupted their advantage. What was once a trap now had openings, opportunities the SEALs could exploit. The team worked in perfect unison, their training and discipline shining through under extreme stress. They were still outnumbered, still under fire, but the dynamic had shifted. They were no longer just trying to survive. They were fighting back, slowly, methodically, and effectively. For the SEALs, the psychological impact of the sniper's intervention was as important as the physical one. Seeing the enemy falter gave them confidence. Knowing that someone had their backs, even unseen, reduced fear and boosted morale. Each member of the team felt a renewed sense of purpose. They were not alone. They were not powerless. They were still in a deadly fight, but now they had a chance. A real chance to turn the impossible odds in their favor. As the battle wore on, the sniper's role remained critical. Each shot was calculated to maintain pressure, disrupt enemy formations, and protect the SEALs as they repositioned. By the time the first signs of dawn began to appear, the SEALs had made significant gains. The initial feeling of being trapped and outgunned was replaced with cautious optimism. The sniper, from a hidden distance, had done more than provide cover. They had changed the entire flow of the fight. Lives had been saved, positions gained, and the impossible situation had shifted into a chance for survival and even victory. In those tense, adrenaline-filled hours, the SEALs understood something fundamental. In war, skill, patience, and precision can outweigh numbers. One carefully chosen action, executed with expertise, could change the course of a battle. The sniper had become the unseen hero, turning despair into hope, fear into courage, and a desperate situation into a fighting opportunity. The stage was now set for the next phase, where the SEALs, bolstered by the sniper's actions, could begin to take the initiative and fight for their survival with renewed strength and strategy. With the sniper's precise shots providing critical support from a hidden vantage point, the SEALs began to act. They had been trapped and pinned down for what felt like hours, but now, with the enemy confused and hesitant, a small window of opportunity had opened. The team leader made a swift decision. It was time to move, to take advantage of the chaos the sniper had created and to strike back in a coordinated way. Every man knew what had to be done, and without hesitation, they began to execute a plan born of intense training and unshakable trust in each other. Moving under heavy fire was never easy. The SEALs used the terrain to their advantage, staying low and moving from cover to cover. Rocks, dips, and shadows became shields as they advanced strategically. They had rehearsed maneuvers like this countless times in training, but nothing compared to the tension of the real battlefield. Each movement carried the weight of potential danger. One misstep could expose them to deadly enemy fire. Yet, the sniper's interventions made it possible. They were no longer moving blindly. Each shot fired by the sniper suppressed enemy positions, distracted the attackers, and allowed the SEALs to gain small but critical ground. The counterattack began with careful precision. A small team moved forward, engaging the enemy at key points while others provided covering fire. Every action was deliberate. They were not trying to fight the entire enemy force at once. Instead, they focused on exploiting weak spots, taking out isolated threats, and creating a sense of unpredictability. The sniper's shots amplified every move, keeping the enemy off balance and giving the SEALs a tactical edge. As the SEALs advanced, they communicated silently, using hand signals and brief eye contact to coordinate movements. Timing was everything. A single shot or movement at the wrong moment could ruin the plan. They had to act as one cohesive unit, anticipating each other's actions and responding instantly. The bond between the soldiers, forged through countless missions and shared hardships, became their greatest strength. Every man knew his role, trusted his teammates, and moved with confidence despite the danger surrounding them. The enemy, once confident and aggressive, now struggled to respond. The sniper had disrupted their formations, and the SEALs' coordinated counterattack took full advantage of the confusion. Soldiers who had been advancing with determination now hesitated, unsure where the next attack would come from or which direction they were vulnerable. Panic began to ripple through the enemy ranks, while the SEALs, moving carefully but decisively, seized the initiative. For the first time since the ambush, the team felt a surge of control over the battlefield. The counterattack was not about reckless aggression. Every step, every shot, and every maneuver was calculated to reduce risk and maximize effectiveness. The SEALs knew they were still outnumbered, so they avoided direct confrontation with large groups of enemies. Instead, they targeted isolated soldiers, disrupted supply and communication lines, and pushed strategically to regain critical ground. The sniper continued to play a vital role, neutralizing threats that the SEALs could not safely reach, allowing them to move and reposition without being overwhelmed. Even in the heat of the fight, the SEALs stayed disciplined. Fear was still present, but it was controlled, focused into precise actions rather than panic. The soldiers relied on their training, instincts, and teamwork. They understood that success in a battle like this did not come from sheer force. It came from smart, coordinated, and disciplined action. The combination of their ground tactics and the sniper's distant precision strikes created a synergy that shifted the battle in their favor. Slowly, the SEALs began to regain the upper hand. Small victories, like clearing a section of the enemy's position or taking control of a key vantage point, built momentum. Each success boosted morale, reinforcing the team's belief that survival was not only possible but achievable. The fear that had gripped them during the ambush was gradually replaced by confidence. They realized that, together and with the sniper's support, they could turn a desperate situation into a fighting chance. Throughout the counterattack, every decision was critical. The team leader continuously assessed the situation, adjusting the plan as needed. When an enemy position became too dangerous to approach, the SEALs adapted, flanking, retreating, or waiting for the sniper to neutralize the threat. Flexibility and quick thinking were as important as bravery. In the chaos of battle, rigid plans often fail, but a team that can adapt in real time can survive even overwhelming odds. By the time the first light of dawn began to break, the SEALs had made significant progress. The enemy, disoriented and shaken by the sniper's intervention and the SEALs' coordinated counterattack, was retreating or consolidating defensively. The SEALs, though exhausted, had reclaimed control over parts of the terrain they had lost and had positioned themselves strategically for the next phase of the battle. Their initial desperation had transformed into cautious optimism. They were still in danger, still outnumbered, but now they had regained momentum. In those tense hours, the SEALs learned a powerful lesson. Even when trapped and outnumbered, careful strategy, teamwork, and skilled support can create opportunities where none seem to exist. The sniper's precise actions had given them breathing space, and their own coordinated effort had begun to shift the tide. They were no longer just trying to survive. They were actively fighting back, step by step, gaining strength, confidence, and hope. The stage was now set for a decisive turning point, one that would test their courage, skill, and resilience even further. The battle had been raging for hours, and the SEALs were still outnumbered, but something had changed. The enemy, once aggressive and coordinated, was now cautious, hesitant, and increasingly disorganized. Every shot from the sniper had sown doubt among the attackers, and the SEALs' careful counterattack had further disrupted their plans. For the first time since the ambush, the SEALs felt that the tide of the battle could actually turn in their favor. The team leader scanned the battlefield, taking in the positions of his men, the enemy, and the surrounding terrain. He could see small but crucial openings forming in the enemy lines. Soldiers who had been advancing with confidence now moved slowly, looking over their shoulders, trying to figure out where the next danger might come from. The sniper continued to eliminate key targets at a distance, keeping the enemy off balance and creating the perfect opportunity for the SEALs to press forward. The SEALs moved with precision and purpose. They didn't rush. They moved like shadows, taking advantage of every weak point in the enemy's formation. Each step was calculated, each action deliberate. They were no longer just reacting, they were dictating the battle. The sense of desperation that had gripped them during the ambush was fading, replaced by determination and controlled aggression. They had survived the initial chaos, and now it was their turn to shape the fight. The enemy's morale began to crumble. Soldiers who had been confident and aggressive were now hesitant, some freezing in place, others retreating to safer positions. Commanders barked orders, but the uncertainty caused by the sniper's deadly precision and the SEALs' counterattack made coordination difficult. Every unexpected shot, every sudden movement from the SEALs, added to the confusion. What had once seemed like an unstoppable force was now faltering, and the SEALs could feel the shift in momentum. The team took advantage of every opportunity. Small squads moved to flank exposed enemy positions, while others provided covering fire to prevent counterattacks. Every movement was synchronized, every decision carefully weighed against risk. They were no longer trapped. They were advancing, regaining ground lost during the ambush. The sniper continued to cover their progress, picking off key threats and keeping the enemy under pressure. The once overwhelming odds were slowly evening out, and the SEALs could finally see a path to survival. Even as they pressed forward, the SEALs remained cautious. They knew that the enemy was still dangerous, still armed, and still capable of striking at any moment. No one let their guard down. Each member of the team stayed alert, scanning for threats, coordinating movements, and protecting their fellow soldiers. Trust and teamwork were more critical than ever. Each man understood that their survival depended not only on skill and courage but also on their ability to act as one cohesive unit. The sniper's role was just as vital now as it had been in the beginning. By eliminating key threats and keeping the enemy off balance, the sniper allowed the SEALs to make calculated advances without exposing themselves to unnecessary danger. From a distance, the sniper could see the battlefield in its entirety, predicting enemy reactions and neutralizing the most dangerous soldiers. Each shot was precise, each action intentional, and every success reinforced the SEALs' confidence. As the hours passed, the SEALs began to regain more and more ground. What had started as a desperate fight for survival was now a battle they could influence. They began to anticipate enemy movements, strike with purpose, and force the attackers into defensive positions. The psychological impact on the enemy was as important as the physical. Fear, confusion, and frustration grew among the attackers, while the SEALs felt a renewed sense of control. They were no longer just surviving, they were leading the fight. The turning point became clear when the SEALs managed to secure a critical position on higher ground. From there, they could observe the remaining enemy forces, coordinate movements more effectively, and apply pressure where it mattered most. The combination of their ground tactics and the sniper's distant support created a situation where the enemy had no safe options left. Each misstep by the attackers was met with swift, disciplined responses from the SEALs. Momentum was firmly on their side. In the midst of all this, the SEALs' focus never wavered. They had experienced moments of fear, exhaustion, and doubt, but now those feelings were channeled into calculated aggression. Every move, every shot, every decision was guided by a combination of training, instinct, and teamwork. They were no longer victims of circumstance, they were shaping the outcome. The enemy, once confident and overwhelming, was beginning to crumble under the pressure of their precise, coordinated actions. By the time the first rays of sunlight pierced the darkness, the SEALs had gained a significant advantage. The enemy forces were faltering, their cohesion broken, and their momentum lost. What had once seemed like an impossible situation had transformed into a fight the SEALs could control. They had survived, adapted, and turned desperation into opportunity. The sniper's deadly precision had created the opening, and the SEALs' courage and strategy had capitalized on it. Together, they had shifted the balance of the battle, proving that even in the face of overwhelming odds, skill, teamwork, and determination could turn the tide. For the SEALs, this was more than just a tactical victory. It was a moment of realization, a reminder that no matter how dire a situation may seem, discipline, courage, and the support of a skilled ally can change everything. They were still in danger, still outnumbered, but now they had hope, momentum, and the confidence that they could survive and overcome. The battle was not yet over, but the turning point had been reached. After hours of intense fighting, the first light of dawn finally began to break across the rugged landscape. The night had been long, terrifying, and exhausting, but the SEALs were still alive. Every man in the team had been pushed to the limits of endurance, skill, and courage. Their clothes were torn, faces streaked with dirt and sweat, and bodies sore from the relentless movements. Yet there was a quiet, shared sense of relief. They had survived what had seemed impossible, and they owed much of that survival to the unseen sniper who had turned the tide of the battle from a distance. The team leader carefully scanned the battlefield, ensuring all his men were accounted for. Despite exhaustion, the SEALs moved with alertness, knowing that danger could still linger. The enemy, though shaken and retreating, had not been completely defeated. Every second still mattered. The SEALs communicated quietly, checking on each other, tending to minor injuries, and ensuring that their formation remained strong. Their training had prepared them for survival, but nothing had prepared them for the overwhelming mixture of relief, pride, and lingering fear that came after such an intense ordeal. From a hidden distance, the sniper watched as the SEALs regrouped. Calm and collected, the sniper ensured no remaining enemy threat lingered in the area before finally signaling that the immediate danger had passed. The SEALs never saw who had been behind the precise, life-saving shots, but each of them felt the silent reassurance that someone skilled had watched over them during the darkest hours of the night. It was a quiet kind of heroism, invisible to the naked eye, yet absolutely vital to their survival. As the sun rose, the team slowly began to move toward the extraction point. The terrain was still treacherous, and the enemy could still be nearby, but the SEALs' confidence had returned. They had regained control of parts of the battlefield, and the coordinated effort between their ground maneuvers and the sniper's distant intervention had created the conditions for a safe retreat. Every step toward safety felt hard-earned, each movement a reminder of how close they had come to disaster. During the long, tense walk to the extraction zone, the SEALs reflected on the night's events. The initial ambush, the feeling of being trapped and outnumbered, the fear, and the relentless pressure of enemy fire, all of it had tested them to the absolute limit. Yet, despite everything they had endured, they had stayed calm under fire, trusted each other, and relied on their training. They had adapted, strategized, and acted with precision even when the odds seemed insurmountable. The battle had been a harsh teacher, but it had also reinforced everything they knew about courage, resilience, and teamwork. Finally, the sound of rotor blades cut through the morning air. The extraction helicopter approached, bringing the promise of safety. The SEALs signaled and moved toward the landing zone in a tight formation, alert to any remaining threats but grateful for the chance to leave the battlefield behind. Each man climbed aboard, muscles stiff and adrenaline still pumping, but spirits lifted by the knowledge that they had survived the night. Every life that had made it onto the helicopter was a testament to skill, courage, and the silent support of the sniper who had changed the course of the battle. As they lifted off, the SEALs looked down at the rugged terrain below. The place that had been a deadly trap hours earlier now seemed almost calm in the morning light, but the memory of the chaos, the fear, and the relentless pressure lingered. Each man silently acknowledged the importance of what had just occurred. They had faced overwhelming odds and lived to tell the story. Their survival was not a matter of chance. It was the result of discipline, training, courage, teamwork, and the timely intervention of a skilled ally. Back at base, the debriefing was emotional. Each SEAL recounted the moments when they had feared the worst, moments when they thought survival might not be possible. There was a shared recognition that without the sniper, without the precise and patient intervention from a distance, none of them might have made it out alive. Stories were told, faces were examined for wounds, and gratitude flowed quietly between teammates. The experience had forged their bonds even stronger, reminding them that every member of a team mattered, and that heroism could take many forms, not all of them visible. In the days that followed, the mission became more than just a tactical success. It became a story of resilience, courage, and the power of teamwork under impossible conditions. Each SEAL carried the memory of the night with them. The fear, the pressure, the critical decisions, and the moments of hope brought by the sniper's actions. It was a story they would retell with reverence, a reminder of what it truly meant to be part of an elite team, facing danger not alone, but together. Even for the sniper, who had remained hidden and largely unseen, there was a quiet satisfaction. Lives had been saved, and the mission's critical objective had been completed. The contribution may not have been visible to the outside world, but within the team it was invaluable. The sniper had acted with patience, precision, and courage, altering the course of events in a way that no one on the battlefield could ignore. In the end, the mission stood as a testament to human skill, resilience, and the impact one determined individual could have on the survival of an entire team. The SEALs had been trapped, outnumbered, and under relentless pressure. Yet they emerged alive because of strategy, courage, and the unseen hand of a skilled ally. The story would live on, not just as a record of survival, but as an enduring reminder of how teamwork, trust, and extraordinary skill can change everything, even in the darkest, most desperate situations.